Hello everyone. I would like to start a topic on origin and development of human rights in India in ancient period, or origin and development of human rights in India since ancient period. Now, before we start the topic, we should know what is human rights. So, human rights are basically the birthright of every human being or all human beings. These rights are inherent in every human being because we get these rights by virtue of birth as a human being. By virtue of birth as a human being, we get this right. So these rights are inherent in us. Human rights are inherent in us because we get these rights by virtue of birth as a human being. And we also can say that human rights are certain claims and certain conditions, and without these rights or without these claims and conditions, no one can lead a dignified life. So to lead a dignified life, we must need human rights. So human rights are certain conditions and claims to lead a dignified life. And the concept of human rights are the product of history. This concept of human rights or the concept of human rights is a product of history, because although human rights are inherent or birthrights, but this concept developed from history or from ancient period. So as this concept of human rights are the product of history, therefore it is very necessary to study and understand the origin and development of human rights in India since ancient period. That means to understand the concept of human rights in case of India, it is necessary to study the background, of human rights, or to study the origin and development of human rights in India since ancient period. So now the development of human rights in ancient period. The philosophy of dharma, it was the foundation of human rights in ancient India. Now, what is dharma? What is the philosophy of dharma? Philosophy of dharma, it implies two principles. One is sarva dharma samanam and the other is vasundhaiva kutumbakam. Now, what is sarva dharma samanam and what is vasundhaiva kutumbakam? Sarva dharma samanam is, it implies everyone is equal, all are equal. That is sarva dharma samanam. And vasundhaiva kutumbakam means we all human family. We are all human family, or we belong to a human family. That means we are all belong to the family, and name of that family is human family. That means we are all same. So sarva dharma samanam and vasundhaiva kutumbakam, these two principles implies that everyone is equal and we all belong to the same family, that is human family. And that was the philosophy of dharma in ancient period. And the rulers and the rule, that means the rulers and the subjects in ancient period, every aspect of the rulers and the subjects were regulated by this philosophy of dharma. Every aspect of the life of rulers, or every aspect of the life of the subjects, all were regulated by the philosophy of dharma. That means philosophy of dharma, or dharma was the supreme law in ancient period. So everyone was regulated by the philosophy of dharma. Then again we can say that Vedas were the sources of humanitarian laws in ancient India. Now, we all know that we have 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Atharva Veda and Sam Veda. And these 4 Vedas were the sources of humanitarian laws in ancient India, because these Vedas, they threw lights on the existence of human rights. How these Vedas threw lights on the existence of human rights? The Rig Veda, it focused on equality of human beings and brotherhood. Rig Veda highlighted, or it refers on equality of human beings and brotherhood. Again, Rig Veda highlighted 3 civil rights of human beings. In Rig Veda, 3 civil rights of human beings were mentioned or highlighted. What were these 3 civil rights? Firstly, right to body, right to dwelling place and right to life. these three rights were highlighted or referred in Rig Veda, or we can say Tana, Skridhi and Jivasi. Right to Tana, right to Skridhi and right to Jivasi. These three civil rights were included or highlighted in Rig Veda. Again, the Atharva Veda also focused on the right to food and right to water. Then, ancient Indian philosophers and their efforts on human rights. How the ancient Indian philosophers tried to bring the concept of human rights, or ancient Indian philosophers, their efforts on human rights. The ancient Indian philosophers, they had made efforts to define human rights as those rights which were inherent in our nature. They believed that since the rights flow from nature and divine authority, they are inalienable. The ancient Indian philosophers, they also believed that, or they also tried to define human rights as those rights which were inherent in our nature. And they believe that as the rights flow from nature and divine authority, these rights are inalienable. Then Panini, he was an ancient Indian philosopher, or he was a Sanskrit grammarian of 5th century BC, and Panini, he highlighted the rights and duties of rulers, ministers, priests and people. So according to Panini, the rights and duties of rulers, ministers, priests and people are governed by the concept of dharma. That means in ancient period, the philosophy of dharma regulated the people, regulated the every aspect of human beings, or regulated the every aspects of the life of ruler or other people. So according to Panini also, the rights and duties of rulers, ministers, priests and people are governed by the concept of dharma. That means they were governed by two principles that were Sarva Dharma Samanam and Vasundhaiva Kutumbakam. Next, Manu, he was the ancient lawgiver. Manu was the ancient lawgiver. He also elaborated certain rules for the guidance of the king. And according to him, the duties of the king should be to uphold the law, and the king should also be subject to law. Like the ruled, or like other people, the king should also be subject to law, and his duty is to uphold the law. It was said by Manu, who was the ancient lawgiver. Again, Kautilya, in his Arthashastra, he wrote a book, and name of that book was Arthashastra, and in his book Kautilya referred rights and duties for the rulers. And according to Kautilya, the duty of the king or the duty of the ruler should be to protect the state from external aggression, and duty of the ruler is to maintenance of internal law and order and safeguarding the welfare of the people. Apart from the duties of the rulers, Kautilya in his Arthashastra, he also mentioned certain rights about women, or rights of women, and he also referred about Stridhana, or women's right to property. And during that period, in 6th century BC, Buddhism and Jainism also emphasized on the values of equality, then the values of ahimsa or non-violence, or the values of denial of materialistic pleasures. These values were emphasized by Buddhism and Jainism in 6th century BC. So, from the above discussion, we can conclude that, or we can state that the values of equality, rights, brotherhoods and so on were existed since ancient period too, and these led to the recognition and legal protection of human rights in India in later. Thank you.